Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BetSperts.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. Andy, today's episode is one of my favorites we do every preseason. It is the capstone where we go through and rapid fire, opposite of a normal deep dive. Just a very shallow, just a skimming of the surface to recap our thoughts on all 32 teams as we head into the season. Of course, Wednesday's episode will be a full-on Week 1 preview with all of our plays for Week 1, which hopefully there will still be some value on the board by the time we get there. The board has been getting smashed this week. I don't know that there's going to be a ton left there, but we'll still handicap every Week 1 game. Happy Labor Day to those of you who are workers out there, grinders. If you're grinding angles, either sports betting or actual angle grinder, happy Labor Day. And Andy, with that, you want to set up the format here a little bit?
We're going to go through all 30 teams. We're going to just use the
32
markets. We're going to go through, well, I said 32.
I thought you said 30 teams.
30, well, maybe I did. Who could know?
I mean, technically the Bears and the Seahawks are teams. So
yeah, we'll count them. So yeah, just like we said, the normal deep dive is like, hey, holy shit, this is an hour and 45 minutes. Well, we have hard outs when we're recording this today, so this is not going to be long. In fact, I may limit you to a sentence on each team. Maybe that's the rules. We're going to go in reverse order of the power rankings determined by the market sentiment right now. So we will finish up with the good teams. We're going to start, and yeah, we'll go back and forth on who gets to say the first sentence. It can be a run-on sentence, but if I hear a period, I am going to I should have the button bar for this so I can hit the buzzer on you hard. But yeah, Houston Texans is where we're starting.
Not my 32 ranked power team, because I do think they have some upside on the offense here, but very, very clearly not a team built to win this season. Low expectations for these guys. Worst roster from a talent standpoint on the defensive side of the ball, but Davis Mills potentially a year 2 leap with Brandon Cooks and Laramie Tunsil as your 2 blue chip players. I do think there is upside with this Texans team, just not enough to get involved with in the betting market.
Yeah, I was hoping for some more upside. I didn't like the coaching hire. Tough luck with your rookie having some health issues. Obviously, we hope he gets better soon. And yeah, it's just between all that, it's a very bad roster. It's going to be very hard to see this team surprising in a meaningful way. Atlanta Falcons, I'll start off with. This is actually a team I have lower than the Houston Texans at certain points. Although I saw some nice things from a certain young quarterback or two in the preseason. So maybe a bit of a squirrely team offensively. I think Pitts can take a big step forward, but too many roster holes to, again, be competing in a meaningful way or surprise with what they're giving us on defense for sure.
Yeah, really solid young nucleus of blue chippers, Kyle Pitts and Drake London and AJ Terrell on the defensive side of the ball. But that's about it. Everybody else who's coming and returning here is huge question marks. I think this is probably your 31st worst defense, but I do think the offense can finish better than 31st, which in general makes this a team that I'm going to look for opportunities to bet their overs game by game, just because as long as Marcus Mariota is healthy, the market is too cool on him. He is not a bottom 5 quarterback. He does have some X factor with what he can do on the ground. So I think, cautiously optimistic that there'll be opportunities to take the points with the Falcons and or bet low totals to the over.
Take us away on the Monsters of the Midway.
Bears. So the 30th ranked power team by market is the Bears. I have them 32nd. I think this is the worst overall roster from a talent standpoint in the NFL, and they have done their young quarterback Justin Fields 0.0 favors with the way that they have rostered this offensive line and skill position group. He is, he was always a guy that I was concerned about getting the ball out of his hand quickly, and you have made that problem that much more difficult by not giving him anyone that can create separation and by putting him behind a bunch of guys that wouldn't start on any other team in terms of an offensive line. So this is dead on arrival, really, and I would expect that if they have any high spots from any veteran players that they get traded in season, because this is as true a rebuild as I can find in all of football.
Yeah, it was. I'm going to go all positives on the Bears. They have gotten rid of Pace and Nagy. New York Jets. I mean, you said it all. They didn't help Fields. It's a really bad spot for them. The New York Jets need to figure out what they have with their young quarterback, and have suffered the worst kind of fate when that sort of roster and that sort of decision making, because their young quarterback is hurt and might not even be ready to start the season. We don't think he will be. You're not going to be able to tell where you need to go with this franchise by playing games with Joe Flacco. You don't have a choice. So I guess upside for again, bad roster. Not good in a bunch of different spots. I mean, we're low. They're not good all over the place, and we're not even getting to evaluate the quarterback. So this is rough. My hopes for this team is he gets healthy enough where they can at least see where they're at and decide if they need to move on for the BYU product.
Okay, so I'm not going to go bad roster. I disagree with that a little bit. I think 2 to 53, quarterback's the most important position, and they have a bottom 3 quarterback. But from 2 to 53, there is talent on this team. They have done a decent job of kind of stocking up in the trenches in terms of where they've invested top flight capital in the draft the last handful of years. They have a bunch of wide receivers who are projects but could potentially break out. They have enough
safety who's going to jail.
A safety who's going to jail, but they had 7 players that they released in cuts that ended up on other teams. So it's like they have a decent talent depth wise, but in a very crowded AFC, they are clearly in the bottom with the Texans in terms of expecting to do anything. I think a good season for these guys is, Robert Saleh saves his job if they can develop Zach Wilson to the point where they don't feel like they have to move on from him after this year. But I am not seeing that. So moving up to 28, the 28th power rated team.
Hashtag one pride.
I can't believe this. The market thinks that the Detroit Lions are the 28th best team in the NFL, below the Seattle Seahawks, which is kind of bananas to me. 4.7 points below average in terms of just generic power ranking. That's crazy. This team is relatively talented. Goff is not a great quarterback who's going to elevate a roster to Super Bowl contender, but he's certainly good enough to get a young, talented team with a coach that makes good decisions and just generally gets his guys to play hard for him. They're going to sniff the playoffs, in my opinion. I think you bet on upside in terms of breakout potential for Aiden Hutchinson and Defensive Rookie of the Year. I think you bet on upside and Coach of the Year potential for Dan Campbell. And I think the first half of the schedule, which is relatively soft, you're going to see a lot of opportunities for the Lions to get surprising wins. Ultimately, I think this team can finish 10-7 and sniff a wild card. And I think, Aiden Hutchinson, Defensive Rookie of the Year, is the only bet I would, if I could only have one bet on this team, that's where I would hit.
Yeah, we both bet him. We like him. I think he's not the most talented defensive rookie for a career standpoint, but he has the most opportunities this season. I love that bet. I'm not as hot on the Lions as far as betting on them for over win totals and things of that nature. There's still a big gulf to overcome. They still have some spots where they need to improve, and they still are probably a minus in the quarterback position. But yeah, they should not be below Seattle. I feel that's a little disrespectful. I will move on to Seattle and say similar, and I guess pushing back a little on the Jets thing. Like, the Jets have talented players. They just don't have enough in one bunch or one positional group to move the needle. The Seahawks are kind of like that in the same way, but they have a good wide receiver room that is going to get absolutely wasted because, just like the Jets, they're missing at the most important position. And it feels even worse in this spot because you have a wide receiver one whose ceiling is all pro, who is going to get the ball thrown to him by players who, might not be in the league in a year or two. So really rough spot for this team. And, just like we talked about on the preview, the defense did what they could last year. That doesn't seem sustainable. This defense probably gets worse than it was last year at times. And it's devoid of a quarterback. So this could be a real rough year, but boy, there's some high picks out there for a team like this.
Yeah, I think even having Seattle at 27th right now in terms of market rating, they have an opportunity to go down. This defense, in terms of talent, in my opinion, is bottom 5, clearly. You brought up the wide receiver room, which is maybe the bright spot of the offense. The O-line might be fine, serviceable, but I don't have any faith that Geno Smith or Drew Lock is going to be able to elevate this team whatsoever. Hard schedule, hard division. And in general, a coach and a GM that I do not believe in their vision for constructing a team or for how you run an offense and how to compete in the year 2022. So until those guys move on, I am a seller of the Seahawks in totality. Moving on
to
the Jags.
Yeah.
Another team that I think you can be cautiously optimistic on. If this team finishes 26th overall in terms of power rating at the end of the season, I will be surprised. The major reason for optimism, there are 2. Trevor Lawrence is entering year 2. He should take a leap in terms of his ability to produce at the NFL level. And to help him, they have an adult in charge in Doug Peterson now, who at least through this portion of the preseason is getting glowing reviews in stark contrast to what we heard this time of year last year about Urban Meyer. So I think in what is the weakest division, top to bottom in the NFL in the AFC South, the Jaguars could surprise, take home a South divisional title, in which case their ceiling all of a sudden looks a lot like last year's Cincinnati Bengals. I don't think this is a realistic outcome, but certainly if there is a surprise team in the mix for the AFC playoffs, it is the Jaguars, in my opinion.
Yeah, and we talk about this when we make divisional bets. I didn't like a long price on like the Steelers because there's too many other good to decent teams in the division, whereas I am really out on the Texans, and we'll get to the Titans as well. That's why this does feel like a decent long shot. Like you said, the biggest thing is a grown-up being in charge, which is kind of like a redo of last year. All right, let's see what would happen if we had someone who cared about the team in place. And it'll be really interesting to see what they can get out of Trevor Lawrence this year. So excited to watch that. Excited to see the development at the quarterback spot there.
Yeah.
As we move to a spot where I don't, the New York Giants. Daniel Jones, I guess preseason doesn't mean everything, but not real high on getting anything further than what we've seen from him already. I like some of the things he can do with his legs. I don't know if he can become a full-time starting quarterback in a long-term plan for a team like this. It is a team who does, again, we're moving up. This team has some nice pieces here and there, but if you don't have a quarterback, you're not going to do much. You're not going to surprise anybody. Even in the weaker of the two conferences, I don't have this team as someone who, will likely compete for a wild card, because that is their absolute ceiling. If Dimes does things, they could compete for a wild card. I'm not there.
Yeah, stock down on the Giants over the balance of this preseason. We came into this preseason cycle with a little bit of cautious optimism just because the Daboll hire was good, because the GM hire was good. You want to know what stock down looks like? Go look at the pictures of the Giants GM reflecting on the reality of how bad this team is, how bad this roster is, and how unlikely they are to compete this season. The market currently ranks their offense 29th, which tells you that the Daniel Jones experience is over. I agree with that. The market is telling you that this defense is about 18th ranked. I do not agree with that. This defense is bad. And I think ultimately this Giants team probably finds their way into the bottom 3 in the NFC with the Bears and the Seahawks. And if they don't finish 4th in the NFC East, it is only because the next team, the 24th ranked Washington Commanders, implode with the locker room turning on Carson Wentz, which is entirely possible. This is the first team in the rankings so far where I think we have a little bit of a broad range of outcomes. I think there's kind of a narrow range of everyone we've talked about so far, but the Washington Commanders could find some stability under Ron Rivera and surprise to the good and be in the mix for a wild card in a weak NFC. But I think more likely than that, Carson Wentz drags these guys down in terms of offensive potential with the mistakes that he is making. And overall, the fish rots from the head in Washington. And until Dan Snyder is gone, then the Washington Commanders can basically go F themselves. I think, Andy, real quick sidebar. What are the chances that Daniel Snyder picked the Commanders as a team name specifically so he could call himself the Commander-in-Chief?
120% higher than that, maybe. I don't know. And yeah, at this point, we are at the 24th ranked team, and the best quarterback we've talked about is Jared Goff. I mean, that's all I have to say about this team. They have some nice flash pieces on defense. They have a couple of nice offensive weapons. But if you don't have a quarterback, it's really hard to shoot up the rankings unless you have everything else working and an innovative coaching staff. I respect Ron Rivera, but not enough to take what they have here and make it into something good. Speaking of bad quarterbacks, Pittsburgh. We're going to see what Mitch Trubisky can do in a new – I guess we got to see him in Buffalo, but see him in a new probably starting role here before we end up likely seeing some rookie time. So for me, as a casual observer, maybe not even as a bettor, I hope this team sucks out loud on offense under Mitch, and we get to see more of the rookie just so I get to see what that's all about, and I can make some decisions on this team going forward. Otherwise, elite defense, especially in certain spots. It's tough to be an elite defense if your team doesn't score a bunch. That puts a lot on you, but you're going to have some huge flash plays. TJ Watt's going to be on Sports Center, and that's going to be the most exciting part about this team so far.
Yep, super tough schedule, super low expectations for the offense. Even though you have moved on from the bloated corpse of Ben Roethlisberger, this is still an offensive system under Matt Canada that I do not buy, which I think lowers the potential for Pittsburgh getting wins this season. I see this as a 4 or 5 win team. I think all unders are fair to look at. I think there are weaknesses on the defense that people are not acknowledging. And again, I think once you get to about midway through the season, the most important part of the entire 2022 campaign for Pittsburgh is evaluating Kenny Pickett's ability to play in cold weather, wet weather conditions outdoors with his tiny hands. And we will learn one thing or another about his future for the Steelers in the months of November, December, and January. So moving up the rankings to Cleveland Browns. They're 22 now, but by the end of this season, this is a team that's probably going to be power rated in the top half of the NFL. Currently, the offense is expected to be about 25th, which with Jacoby Brissett under center sounds exactly right to me. Defense expected to be about 8th in the NFL, which, considering some of the strengths across that defense, sounds about right to me. So, team that could keep things together, win with defense, win some close games with the running attack that they have, because the Cleveland Browns, to me, team that looks brilliant playing with the lead, a team that will not come from behind if they find themselves at a deficit. And they just need to kind of hang in there around 500 until Watson comes back. If Watson goes 5-1 down the stretch, this is a wild card team. If he goes anything less, they are on the outside of the playoffs looking in.
Yeah, this is one of our more recent ones. I ended up live on the podcast kind of coming to the realization that it was a parlay with too many legs for this team to end up in the playoffs. You need Jacoby Brissett to play through the tough middle part of the schedule with some aplomb, and then a player who hasn't played live football for 18 months to come into a new organization, a new team, a new coaching staff, a new scheme, and play really elite ball for the last 6 games or so to get this team in the playoffs. It's a big ask. I'm probably not there. It's going to be tough in the tough AFC. I'm more of a 2023 Browns fan.
Yep.
The New England Patriots, basically a team that we've seen year in and year out figure it out on defense by midseason. Expecting more of the same. In fact, you got your old defensive coordinator in town again. He should maybe even help with that. The unfortunate part about this is Mac Jones wasn't asked to do very much. We didn't get to see a ton out of him. We're not sure if he actually has any more upside. You lost your star offensive coordinator for the last decade or so, and you've replaced him with said defensive coordinator and a special teams coordinator that left and was fired from a head coaching job. So I worry about the coaching here, and I don't like that, because if you wanted to take the next step with Mac Jones, which is what's necessary for this team to succeed again, you're probably doing it in the wrong ways.
Yes, the entire offseason, from a coaching staffing standpoint to a roster building standpoint, suggests one of two things. Belichick is not ready to build around Mac Jones, or he has completely lost his marbles. And we will be asking ourselves these questions all season long as we try to figure out what exactly is the plan in New England. This defense lacks major talent all of a sudden, particularly in the secondary, and the offense. Even, they've literally done everything they can to prevent Mac Jones from taking a year 2 leap, which is crazy because he was the best rookie quarterback we saw last year. With that, we moved to Carolina.
Yeah, we're up to team
Number
2
20.
that's sabotaging their quarterback. We'll keep it count. Bears. So far, we're at Bears and Patriots. There's more.
Yes, that's crazy. The Carolina Panthers are the team number 20 right now. This is a stock up. They are currently expected to be the 20th best offense, 12th best defense. I agree with that take that there is bullish potential here for the defense, especially if J.C. Horn can get healthy and can give you any kind of a year 2 leap at the cornerback position. But Baker Mayfield, I'm not ready to buy in on him at all. I think I am too recently wounded by him from last year and his antics in Cleveland, and I will not be cheering for Baker Mayfield to do anything this year. That said, if he plays like he played 2 years ago for the Browns, then the Panthers in a weak NFC South could get to 9 wins. I think that's their ceiling. I think the most likely outcome is a 6-11 campaign.
Yeah, real simply, it does probably just hinge on if you get Baker of 20 or Baker of 21. Because Baker of 20 probably takes advantage of the DJ Moores and the Robbie Andersons, and even some of the other pieces that you have. You have a pretty good running back who can also catch the ball. You drafted a rookie tackle. You added some pieces of the offensive line. The defense isn't completely devoid of talent. In fact, there's some bright spots on there. This team is close to being a team who could get into contention. It just needs Baker Mayfield to play well, which I'm not 100% sure is something that exists anymore.
Especially because he's paired with McAdoo.
McAdoo doesn't help either. Which I guess some guys are better coordinators than coaches. We'll find out. Speaking of people who shouldn't be coaching in the league, Cliff Kingsbury and the Arizona Cardinals. That was a Freudian slip on how low I am on Arizona, but Arizona is in a weird spot, especially to start the season. Their star wide receiver is missing. They lack a little bit of an identity on offense, I think, despite this, we're going to run this, this air raid, and this is us. And it's like, well, guess what? It's actually kind of predictable, and it doesn't always work. And if your quarterback is even a little dinged up, your offense takes 10 steps back. The defense is old. It's not going to be as good. That's taking steps back. I think this team is properly rated and will miss the playoffs.
Yes, properly rated is correct. I have them 19th in my rankings as well. They're expected to be a top 10 offense, which I'm fine with. They're expected to be the 28th best defense, which I am fine with. What I'm not fine with is that they paid everyone after a campaign that was pretty suspect last year. Cliff Kingsbury getting an extension is laughable. Steve Keim getting an extension is laughable. Keim's, just general stewardship of this roster is not great. He's taken some gambles that have paid off, but overall his deployment of draft capital has been an F. And I think ultimately Kyler Murray's health will determine whether this is a 9-7 team or a 7-9 team. Moving on to your Minnesota Vikings. Stock is up on these guys. There have been a lot of people who have been trying to figure out how you fade the Packers because they're going to take a step back offensively, and it has taken a while for the market to settle on the Vikings are that team. Most of the optimism about the Vikings is circled entirely on the shoulders of Justin Jefferson, who is expected to elevate Kirk Cousins to a top 10 quarterback performance and elevate this offense. to the potentially scoring 30 points a game. Meanwhile, the defense to me looks like a huge suspect problem. I don't think that you are going to get the run defense you need to be able to give your team an opportunities to come back in games. And even even if Kevin O'Connell, the new coach, turns out to be a forward-thinking individual, this entire experience, it looks and feels and seems very familiar to the 2021 LA Chargers. And I think ultimately, if they are power rated as a top 12 team, but are somehow losing games that they should not lose, it's going to be because of the run defense, and it's going to be a head scratcher for a lot of people who are betting on and losing on the Vikings.
Yeah, and when you said on the squarely on the shoulders, I thought you might be saying Kevin O'Connell rather than what the Justin Jefferson you went with. Although Justin Jefferson has high expectations for this year, so does Kirk Cousins, who's shown that maybe he hasn't exactly plateaued. You have a high-end running back. You have some nice pieces maybe starting to gel a little on the offensive line. Defense is suspect in spots, starting to age out, but the pass rush could be a bright spot. It's a team that definitely competes for the NFC North, especially if the Packers are to take a step back. I think probably rated a little lower in the market than I would have them, which is probably true of the next team as well, the New Orleans Saints of New Orleans. They are another team who maybe it was a little bit of an afterthought last year, as people kind of forget some of those lost seasons. They call them lost seasons for a reason. You lost your quarterback, you're switching coaches here. It's a bit of and not only that, you didn't have your playmaker wide receiver for the whole season. You get Thomas back, you bring in Olave, you get hopefully a full season of Jameis, and we get to see what this offense is with the new coaching staff. Has good defensive pieces. The ceiling for this team is winning their division and probably winning a playoff game or two, because it has, the blueprint of a team that can stop the run if they need to and score some points through the air. It is a team that could maybe win as an underdog in the playoffs if things work out well, but it goes as Jameis and some of these other pieces goes. If Thomas isn't 100% and Jameis doesn't play well, the floor is also pretty low.
Oh, great call. Yeah, huge range of outcomes. This is potentially a double-digit win team if as you said, Jameis clicks. But if he reverts at all and is turning the ball over, then this is potentially, a bottom 10 type of a team. Currently market ranking their offense 21st. That is too low. Currently market ranking their defense 6th. That is too high. What does it mean when you have a market is off on the offense low and off on the defense high? That means this is an over team. I think there are going to be a lot of opportunities to bet overs with the Saints this year, and adding to the mix the potential that Jameis Winston regresses a little bit in terms of his turnover percentage just puts more fuel on that fire. So I think that my betting plan of attack over the season is going to be backing overs. I got a little bit of 5-1 to win the South in pocket. That number is long gone. I would not bet the Saints at the current market numbers because I think ultimately there's going to be a nice entry point on the Bucs later this season. Tennessee Titans, number 16. Boy, does that seem high. This is and basically expected to be a team that is a half a point better than average. And if you go solely based on defense, I agree with that. This defense looks like a top 10 unit to me, particularly up the middle where they are quite talented. Jeffrey Simmons, potential breakout player of the year on defensive side of the ball. I have some long shot prices on him for defensive player of the year. And I think in general, Tennessee's offense is the issue and is the question here. They are not a very forward-thinking team in general in terms of the way they run their offense, on top of the fact that the organization told you this offseason that they quit on Ryan Tannehill. If they had restructured his contract and had lowered his cap hit, they could have kept A.J. Brown. They could have invested in the offensive line. Instead, they elected to basically send him on his way. I think realistically, a slow start to the season for the Tennessee Titans is in order, considering how hard their schedule is, at which point it is Malik Willis time as they evaluate if they got a steal in last year's draft before deciding where to move forward with this franchise at the quarterback position. Very realistic that they are tanking this season and that they will bounce back quickly and be a contender in the AFC in years to come, because they are a front office, at least, that seems to be able to self-evaluate better than other front offices.
Yeah, team number 3 that is sabotaging their own quarterback because, yeah, I mean, just the moves they made, what you're starting, and maybe Robert Woods is fine, but your number 1 is coming off a fair injury, and your number 2 has 3 names, and I don't know, like the wide receiver room leaves a little bit to desired, considering they basically had what 2 or 3 Hall of Famers come through in the last 5 years in the receiving
Yeah.
room, and now we're stuck with Robert Woods, which it does feel like if this starts slow because of the schedule and we get some bad play because of the sabotage, we get to evaluate Malik Willis. I'm down in this team. That is another reason, like I said, I'm fine with the Jags as a long shot in this division. Everybody's favorite division champ,
Yeah.
the Philadelphia Eagles, got that dog in them. My goodness, the whole world has come together to fall in love with this team.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm okay with it. I still don't know if I have a big enough sample size to really know what Sirianni is. I know I don't have enough sample size to know what Hurts is, but boy, they put a good roster together. And that's the thing, like, even the floor of if we get the worst of what we saw from Hurts, it's still like this is a good team because it has to be. You have this many good players, and we saw some glimpses of it last year. So I don't hate the market's willingness to embrace this team. A lot of people have made some really good cases for Sirianni Coach of the Year. Plenty of bets on them to win the division, the conference, the Super Bowl, to make the playoffs, everything like that. So I'm an Eagles buyer. I don't have much in my full season portfolio, but this is a team I'll look to back, and if they end up in the playoffs, I'll look to continue to back, because that means if they've win this division and they end up in the playoffs, it means it's worked out with the offensive scheming and the quarterback, and I'll continue to take them then.
Yeah. So team number 1 that went all in around their quarterback. Stark contrast to some of the ones that are sabotaging their quarterback. All in around Hurts. Way that they've rostered this squad. Sick in the trenches on both sides of the ball. Solid weapons in the passing game. Solid weapons in the secondary, even, which is somewhat of a surprise. And I think this is an easy schedule. Easiest schedule for any good team. Which means regular season success is to be expected. And I am not with you in terms of expecting them to do much in the playoffs. I think that they don't match up well against the beasts in the NFC who could sneak their way in, at which point I think this Philly team is a playoff fade.
I like them against Minnesota.
Yeah, I like them. Yeah, I mean, if they're matched up against an afterthought that sneaks their way in, then that's fine. But if they're matched up against some of the blue bloods, then I'm not feeling great about backing Philly, even if they are at home. But I think being at home throughout the playoffs is in play. This team has a ceiling that is number 1 seed potential, and I think that's the way you bet into the upside here. I think you bet into the long shots of they get the 1 seed in the NFC. They well exceed their win total. Didn't you get involved in a win total ladder for these guys?
Oh yeah, I did. That's what I have. I know I have some Eagles money. Just couldn't remember where. I have too many futures bets at this point.
Yeah, let's get 13 wins. I think that's entirely reasonable considering how weak this schedule is, and just in general how talented the roster is. So, team number 2 that went all in around their quarterback, the number 14 Miami Dolphins. Stock is up on this team throughout the preseason for the market, but I am not necessarily there. I did not like what we saw from Stinky Tua, and in general, is he above the replacement level for a quarterback? Sure. But is he going to, take a year 3 leap, which is effectively his year 2 leap because of the hip injury he sustained and how few starts he's made? I'm not there. Mike McDaniel, I'm concerned about his ability to command the locker room, particularly considering what his scheme may look like, in stark contrast with what his quarterbacks can accomplish, what his quarterback can accomplish and what his skill position players thrive doing. It feels like a lot of pieces that don't really fit together. And I think the defense is going to take a massive step backwards. So this is a team that I'm betting overs in general, just because I don't think the 11th ranked defense is very realistic. But I am not at a 14 power ranking for the Dolphins. I think the market says 1.1 points better than average. I'm more like 1.1 below average for these guys. So opportunities to fade the Dolphins as we go through the season, but mostly I'm going to be doing that by betting their opponent's team total over.
Yeah, we'll see how a team responds to a new coach who looks like he should be wearing a Geek Squad shirt and showing up at a van to your house to fix your MacBook. I don't know. He's the antithesis of our guy up in Detroit, Mr. Campbell,
Dan Campbell,
anti-Dan Campbell, but he has a lot of steam behind him as being an offensive innovator. He comes from a good tree. It still comes down to Stinky Tua. Stinky Tua stinks. It has a low range despite having this much talent on the roster, talent all over, and 900 running backs. I'm not there. I think they're rated about fine. I have them right at 0. I have them off the neutral team. So I'm not too keen on fading them yet because of the upside, but I'm certainly not a buyer. The Las Vegas Raiders of Las Vegas. I just got to say those team names over so I can nail the cities that they currently reside in. Carr, probably underrated by the market for a few years now, maybe swinging so hard to the other way where people are in love with him. I get it. He's good, but he has had good receivers around him, and they've had a scheme that allowed him to sling it a little, and they've been behind a bunch or in games with like the Chargers where you needed to score 40 points to stay in these games, or the Chiefs. God, those games have been something in the past few years. Lots of talent on this team. They've got their wide receiver one. Their ceiling for their wide receiver and their tight end are both to be the best in the league at their position. That's a good spot to be in at this juncture in the NFL's kind of evolution. Some question marks because of the bad drafting the last few years, but a few pieces took some step forwards on the defensive side. I'm okay with this team being right where they're at. I have them above average, despite being in a tough conference, a tough division. They have the schedule too, where this team could win enough to sneak into a playoff spot.
Yeah, same feeling with properly ranked, but I think within division they are a little underrated. We are at team 13. This is the first AFC West team we've mentioned. All 4 AFC West teams are in the top 13.
I would have Denver.
This is I know we'll get to Denver in their ranking in a second, but the Vegas Raiders are they would be the 8th ranked AFC team right now, so they're on the outside looking in terms of playoff, but I don't think it's unrealistic. I don't think they are unrealistic in terms of being in the mix. You mentioned bad drafting. Most of the bad drafting was first round picks, and it's easy to point and laugh at how bad that's gone, but they've found some diamonds in the rough. The Max Crosbys of the world, the Hunter Renfros of the world, they have decent players on this team.
It's like Mayock left the room after the first round.
Or vice versa. Or he was just a grinder and only was working on down the board, assumed that they would get the top picks right, and they never did. But whatever the case is, they have good players. This team is very talented. And for what it's worth, Derek Carr was given 0 opportunities to succeed last year with the way that they stripped down that offensive line, the way that they sabotaged him last year heading into the season. And all he did was hold that team together while their coach resigned and their wide receiver one went to jail. And he kept them together and played them to a playoff game, road game, almost beating the Super Bowl representative Cincinnati Bengals. So Carr, now with a stable voice in the room and with McDaniels, I think Ken's, put together a solid season here and, is a factor for the playoffs. I think you bet on upside with this team, potentially either making the playoffs with the market expecting only a 40% chance and or winning the AFC West, where if you can get anything better than like a 6-1 type of price. Moving up to market down, the Dallas Cowboys. It's easy to see why. They lost one of the
most injured team already.
They're not the most injured team in my mind. That's the Bucs, but most critically, lost the piece that they could least afford to lose.
Yeah, at all the wrong spots.
At all the wrong spots, yeah. This Dallas Cowboys offense was going to take a step backwards this year with just in general with the way that they've rostered the team. But that has gotten worse with the loss of Tyron Smith for this at least the first 3/4 of the season. Dallas now all of a sudden a precarious O-line, Dak who doesn't play great when under pressure, and a receiver room that is all of a sudden looking very lean with CeeDee Lamb and a bunch of guys that are going to have to find roles. Defense, I think, is underrated. Market has been going bananas all offseason about how it was unsustainable the way that this defense performed last year because they got so many turnovers, so many takeaways, and they scored a bunch of freaking touchdowns on special teams and defense also. And while I agree with all that, there are still really talented players on this defense, and maybe the most talented defensive player in the league in Micah Parsons. They are not a 20th ranked unit by my numbers. I think they are a top half of the league defense, even with regression coming. I think in general, Cowboys to the under game by game is going to be a solid play until the market adjusts.
Yeah, agree. The offense was always going to take a step back, and now it's taken 3 steps back. I'll close with that. The wide receiver core isn't what it was going to be, and then it suffered an injury. You're going to be reliant on a rookie, which I hope works out because I have an offensive rookie of the year ticket. You're having trouble on the offensive line, and now you have an owner who has more than just bluster to him, actual influence over what happens in the games, saying that they want to run the ball more. So out on the Dallas offense. And speaking being out on offenses, Green Bay not only relying on one rookie, relying on 2 rookies probably to step up bigly with their Hall of Fame quarterback, make something happen up there with a roster that's been oddly constructed at times, but has still worked because they have a decent leader of men, a decent idea of what they want the offense to be, enough pieces to make it happen, and the buy-in of Aaron Rodgers for at least the last couple of years. You never know where this guy's head's at. Obviously, full-on news cycle for him during the offseason. We'll see if we get the man who was bought in and engaged over the last 2 years, or the guy from 3-4 years ago who was looking like he was going to retire mid-game at some points.
Yeah, very, very, very fragile situation that they built themselves here. Have not loved their draft decisions or their roster building vision over the last couple of years here in Green Bay. And the offense is going to take a major step backwards with absence of Devontae Adams and in general, a bunch of offensive coaches too. OC coordinator Nate Hackett, gone. Bunch of offensive assistants, gone. This is going to be a very different looking offense. It may catch some teams by surprise early in the season. There's going to be a lot of A.J. Dillon. You're going to get a lot of Aaron Jones. I mean, your most dynamic passing threat is probably Aaron Jones. So it's going to be a weird looking team. The market is ranking this offense number 7 overall right now, which I find absolutely hilariously stupid. That should be at best league average offense. Questions at the offensive line in terms of health. Defense right now ranked 13th in the NFL. That can go up, though. I think that this defense is rostered very, very well in terms of talent, and I like Joe Barry's scheme generally for the current age of the way that the NFL is played. That said, they're very light. They can be pushed around. They can be run on, and if this run defense doesn't get to the Mendoza line, then the Green Bay Packers are going to be like a 6-11 surprise what the hell happened type of team in my mind. Ultimately, I expect this defense to finish top 5, which would elevate the Packers into a playoff spot, if not an NFC North championship. But it is going to be tough for them. And I think the growing pains on the offense are going to be present and obvious for the duration of the season because of who they have to throw the ball to. Indianapolis Colts are the number 10 power ranked team by market. My goodness gracious, has this been a little bit of an overreaction over the balance of the season on how good this team can actually be? Yes, Matt Ryan is an upgrade over Carson Wentz. Yes, there is breakout potential for Michael Pittman Jr. In fact, I love him for most receiving yards at 50-1 is in pocket, and I think that's good down to like 30-1. But this Indianapolis Colts team still has issues in pass protection from the standpoint, from the offensive line, and I think in general the defense being taken over by Gus Bradley is a negative. I'm not a Gus Bradley guy. I don't love some of the cornerback, depth here beyond Gilmore. So a 5th ranked expected defense is not correct in my mind. And a 13th ranked offense, I think, can go up. So what does that mean? I think the Colts are a team that goes over totals, particularly early in the season. But I think that they are a little bit of a fraudulent favorite at their current market price to win the AFC South.
Yeah, I don't love them where they're ranked, but I still have enough hate in my heart and my numbers for everybody else in the division that I still just think they win the division and are a quicker out in the playoffs. I'm fine with the move at quarterback. You had to do something that wasn't Wentz, but it's probably not. I was about to say the long-term answer. Of course, it's not the long-term answer. He's old, but it's maybe not the answer to getting past the elites in the AFC. So I see this team coasting to a division championship and then having a cap of one possible playoff win at that point.
Okay.
The Bengals, we just talked about. Regression comes for everyone, but it comes in different ways. And if you do things like the 2018 Bears and you rely on a quarterback who was doing some wild things that were well above his head and a lot of turnover luck, maybe regression comes for you quickly. But if you do things the right way, where you put together a defensive scheme that's unique and hard to predict, and you have a dynamic passing offense, maybe regression comes a little slower, a little lighter. I do think this team is very, very live to win their division, all things considered, with the step back two other teams are very much going to take and how thin the roster in Baltimore is. So we just talked about this team, 11-12 wins, absolutely within their grasp, which is wild. I think they win more games than they did last year, but then do more poorly in the playoffs.
That's a very valid expectation. Yep. Year 3 leap potentially for Joe Burrow, year 2 leap potentially for Jamar Chase keeps this team squarely in the top 5 of potential of offenses. Investments in the offensive line. Also, again, the floor for this offense in my mind is like top 8. I think realistically this could go as high as top 3, but is median expectation top 5 offense. The value for me is Bengals at plus 170 right now to win the AFC North. There are only 2 elite teams in the NFL. They are Buffalo and Kansas City. Everybody else is fighting for the top spot in that second tier, and I think that the ceiling for the Bengals is that spot. Clearly, they could be the third best team in the AFC, considering some of the questions that I have about the likes of the Chargers, the Broncos, the Ravens, the Colts, and the Raiders. So a team that I'm buying stock in right now. Schedule starts easy. They get out to a 10-2 type of start, and you're going to be able to capitalize on equity that is in pocket with this Bengals squad. Great coordinators, and in general, I think the train is leaving the station in terms of believing in Joe Burrow being a long-term elite quarterback in the NFL. Moving on to a quarterback that we know nothing about, Trey Lance and the San Francisco 49ers, the 8th best team in the NFL, Andy. We have not seen what this quarterback will give us, which means that the Niners represent the broadest range of outcomes of all NFL teams. If Trey Lance is good, this Niners team is the best in the NFC. If Trey Lance is bad, this Niners team might still make the playoffs, but probably, could finish as low as below 500. The strengths of this team are clearly on the defensive side of the ball. Questions with the offensive line and how that will gel with Trey Lance has me hesitant to buy stock in the Niners now, other than the super long shot stuff that I already have in pocket, like Lance MVP. I think the fact that the Niners played the Rams so early in the season before their offensive line gels, and that we know, or at least expect, that the Rams are going to be more healthy, I think that is bad for the Niners' potential to win the NFC West. But ultimately, I am more excited to watch San Francisco 49ers games than I am to watch basically any other team besides the Buffalo Bills this season.
Yeah, I'm like you said, a lot of questions to be answered, and it's wild to see a team power rated this high with a quarterback who started 2 games. We just don't know what we're getting. He looked a little tentative at times, but he was a rookie. I don't know what you want from him. A lot of talent on this roster, and they were absolutely bitten by the injury bug for 2 consecutive years. So if this is a healthy team, like you said, they might make the playoffs anyway, even if we don't have the quarterback. And if Lance works out, if he was merited to be picked that high, then Christ, this is a Super Bowl contender, which is maybe why they have a wide range of outcomes, I believe. Let's do the Los Angeles teams right in a row. The Rams, I'm fine with this. Like, they won the Super Bowl. I don't think they were the best team last year. They had a very, very, very high-end roster. It was very, very thin, and we said so much. They didn't get injured, though. And we said if they don't get injured, they're going to be good. They were great. In fact, they added pieces. You added a defensive stud. You added another wide receiver, which helped because you lost one. And they ended up winning a bunch of close games in the playoffs, getting it done. Good for McVay. Like, it was nice to see someone I actually believe in get a Super Bowl ring, even maybe Stafford to a certain extent. I think a lot of that's repeatable. The one part that's absolutely out of their hands is the injury stuff. The injury luck goes the wrong way. They're still thin. They could drop quickly into the 3 spot in this division, but right now the ceiling is right where they ended up last year, being very competitive to win this division and win or be competitive in any playoff game they're in again.
Yep, this team is Super Bowl or bust, and they are playing with fire with the Stafford injury. But if Stafford gives you a mostly healthy season and is ready to go in January, then they are a factor in the NFC, and do not overlook them. They match up brilliantly against the likes of the Bucs. They match up poorly against the likes of the Packers, which will be interesting to see how their path materializes and whether you ultimately want to be holding a ticket on the Rams towards the end of the season. They have strong home field advantage. They have elite defensive personnel, but again, as Andy mentioned, they're thin. And I think ultimately I've placed 0 bets on the Rams to this point, and I will not be placing bets on them until we know a little bit better what this playoff roster looks like. The LA Chargers, similarly, I am on the sidelines. Haven't made many bets for the LA Chargers on or against, and I'm cautiously pessimistic about what the ceiling of this team would be, even though they have an absolutely ridiculously talented roster. They added, this is team number 3 now that went all in on a quarterback on a rookie deal. And rightfully so, because Justin Herbert is a top 3 quarterback in the NFL at this moment. And I think if they catch some breaks, if variance bounces in their direction, the Chargers are, if their run defense is above the Mendoza line, then the Chargers are going to be your last undefeated team. And they are going to be in the race for the 1 seed in the AFC, which would set them up well to do something interesting in the playoffs, even though it would be Herbert's first time through the ringer. I think the fact that Herbert has never played a playoff game, that this team as a unit has never gone to the playoffs, is one of the reasons I'm on the sidelines. And if the run defense does not meet that Mendoza line, I could see the Chargers being the one team in the AFC West that is left out of the dance yet again.
Yeah, that is the biggest thing, is probably the lack of experience in the playoffs for a guy like Justin Herbert. I think very high upside, can be, continue to be a high-end quarterback. Ceiling is for sure to be a top 5, top 3 quarterback in the whole damn league, but it is tough to reckon with. Hey, guess what? This is your first playoff game. We did see that last year where we saw, our guy up in Cincinnati have his first playoff game and then have 3 more. But, he also played a Peach Bowl a couple years before that in front of 80,000 people, beat the pants off Oklahoma, and then took care of Clemson in a game with, I think there's more fans at both of those games than can fit in any arena. It's not like he hasn't been in a big game. So Conference of Champions maybe doesn't translate as quickly. That part scares me. Otherwise, you're right. They built around him. They added extra pieces to a defense that can be super good. And they have weapons at the receiving and in the running back spot to really help this kind of become an elite offense. This team has ceiling of best team in the league. It can be there if everything works out. It can be right up there with Buffalo and Kansas City. That's another problem. Buffalo and Kansas City are in your conference. So tough sledding. One of those is even in your division. In the division, and really hard for me to make sense of, Denver is the 5th ranked team by the market. I don't know if they're ranking it by how much you're paying your quarterback. That would be the only thing that makes sense. I would have them closer to 10th. I'm flummoxed by this. They have a bunch of receivers who are supposed to be good, but they're young and mostly untested. And you have a quarterback coming off an injury where we assuming he should be fine, but we've never got to see him really play in a new system like this. So there's a lot of ifs and buts, candy and nuts, and I don't know if you're having a mile high Merry Christmas, because there's a lot of question marks around a team that they're going to rank this high in the market. I would have them a little lower. I'm a sell on this team for sure, and a new head coach.
Price, yeah.
Yeah, at this price, new head coach, new quarterback, young everything, and maybe a little bit of aging in spots on the defense. I can't reckon with them being fifth.
I agree with that 100%. And I would even say that the Russell Wilson contract extension takes any pressure away from this team to win this year. This is going to be a long arc between Hackett and Wilson now. And honestly, they should use this year to figure out exactly how they want to build the offense around Wilson, because I don't know that they have the pieces in place right now. They're going to have to make some moves on the offensive line and at the wide receiver room, tight end position, to kind of find pieces that fit better together with what Wilson can do. And I think Wilson himself, I am buyer beware, because the league effectively solved him by running the too high concept. And while we saw that generally employed to stop the Chiefs and Mahomes adapted quite well to be able to, counter that. We have never seen Wilson solve that. And so the fact that in general defenses, particularly in his division, may have his number, lowers the potential for this offense. Now the market is ranking the offense 17th. That's a little low. I think there probably should be like around 12th, but the market is ranking this defense first overall, which is absolutely bananas. I mean, that doesn't make sense whatsoever. They get a little bit of a bump, of course, playing in Mile High, like the field position game, and in general, like the altitude effects do help the defense. But expecting them to end the season as the number one defense is absolutely mind-blowingly wrong, in my opinion. I think this is like, if they finish top 10, then things went well. And so I think this is probably a team you should circle, particularly on the road, to try to back some overs. Just hope that Wilson isn't solved on that given day. Which moves us up to another major disagreement. Baltimore is fourth. And while they have a top 4 quarterback in Lamar Jackson, the cupboard is bare, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Everybody and their mother has made the case about how many games they lost due to injury last year, and expecting those players back and expecting those players to perform at their pre-injury level seems to be the norm. But even with that assumption, I am not anywhere close to getting this offense to the 11th best in the NFL. The defense, currently ranked second, is their absolute ceiling. And so I think that Baltimore is a sell at this price. I think ultimately, I would like to see Lamar Jackson stay in Baltimore. I'd like to see him get paid. He wants Deshaun Watson money, which he has earned, considering his performance through the handful of years we've seen him. But this Baltimore Ravens team looks perilously close to a full rebuild, considering how old the good pieces are, and in general, how much talent is lacking on the offensive side of the ball. This is a sell until further review, in my mind.
Horrid wide receiver room. You're relying on basically a rookie who was injured last year to be your wide receiver one, while expecting a bunch of positive regression due to injuries. They will run the ball well, and that's about all I can expect from them. I don't know if the passing game will be any good. I'm not sure if the defense will continue to play at the level they've been able to. That's hopeful. I would have this as a top 10 team.
This is borderline team number 4 that's sabotaging their QB?
Yeah, I think this is team number 4. And that's the other thing, too. If you sign him to the big deal, you're in such a weird spot with the rest of your salary that you have a expensive quarterback and a bare cupboard again through not sabotage, but just how the cap works, or you get rid of him and then you are in a rebuild. So I'm curious to what's going on in the front office here, but yeah, I'm calling this sabotage team number 4. And then we'll move on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who you alluded to, maybe the most snake-bitten team preseason, losing offensive linemen left and right. That was something we talked about during their postseason run 2 years ago. That's a theme right now. If you want to play in your home division or your home arena for the Super Bowl, all you have to do is not get hurt the whole year. Go sign a new quarterback. Who did that? Who got a new quarterback in town and is due for some good injury luck, and also plays and also is hosting the Super Bowl this year. We'll have to figure that out. But yeah, that's the injury luck is catching up to them quickly here. They have a quarterback who's, I don't know where his head's at. He retired already, came back, had some time away from the team, and then, like we said, the offensive line injuries are a little troubling. This defense should be elite. If the offensive line pops back into place, it should be good. You have 2 good to great receivers, and actually you have some depth at receiver as well. It should be a very good team. But if the offensive line plays poorly, you do need to remember you have a senior citizen playing behind him, and an injury to him would be catastrophic, as Blaine Gabbert does not keep this roster as a top 10 team.
That's correct. And this is not a sabotage by the team themselves, but maybe more by the football gods taking away Tom Brady's interior offensive line in totality. And then limiting his wide receivers. The squad that Brady is starting the season with should not be power ranked number 3 in my mind. There are way too many holes. Cluster injury at offensive line is a problem, but the defense looks elite in my mind. Todd Bowles running the ship now from Bruce Arians, and in general, Todd Bowles has a one-trick pony when it comes to defensive scheming. He is very aggressive. He is going to blitz you, and if you are a quarterback that does not have adequate protection and or perform well when under pressure, then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to smother you. That said, the Brady deal with the retirement and then coming back and then missing a bunch of camp, presumably so he could go on vacation without his family, was very weird.
That's what I'm doing next weekend.
I guess it's a 40. He's 45. He can do whatever he wants. Tom versus family time is apparently very real. But I'm expecting this team to treat the first 4 weeks of the season, which are absolute hell, like an extended preseason. I think they're going to figure all the pieces that are new, let the wide receivers come back to full strength, and then starting week 5 is sort of the official start to their campaign, at which point I will be a buyer on the Bucs, assuming that Tom Brady himself does not get injured between now and then. So football gods not smiling on the Buccaneers now, market too high on them now, but a team to circle and buy at the right time, which is the evergreen plan for the Kansas City Chiefs. Cannot leave a hole in your portfolio that has an arrowhead shape to it. You must at some point address the Chiefs in some way because they are always a factor. 4 straight years hosting the AFC title game. Pat Mahomes and Andy Reid return and are the most dynamic quarterback coach combination in the NFL, on the offensive side especially. And even in a very tough division where the margin has narrowed between you and all 3 other teams, they have to be considered the favorites. I mentioned already that I think there are only 2 elite teams in the NFL, them and Buffalo, and the entire notion of them being elite is assuming that Mahomes can pick up where he left off, even in the absence of Tyreek Hill, and have a top 3 offense because he is that good and that talented and that capable of hitting a home run on any single drop back. Defense, top 10, not so fast, my friend. That is an overrated defense if I've ever seen it. I think in general, Kansas City's success this year relies on the defense at least being league average and the offense being elite as always. And with that, I will look for an opportunity to bet on them once they figure things out.
Yeah, it's hard to bet against the best quarterback in the league, one of the best coaches in the league, a coaching staff that stayed mostly intact. And, while not a top 10 defense, a very serviceable defense, and a team that's just done it for a long time and has a lot of experience in the playoffs. I want the Kansas City Buffalo AFC title game. I want that in my life. I don't know if we'll get it if we don't see big step forwards by basically everybody in the receiving core to fill the hole that was Tyreek Hill, not only as a deep passer, but as just a dangerous weapon. I mean, he was like a CMC Jonathan Taylor Eckler type weapon with the ball in his hands as a short yardage receiver. And then he was just like those guys, but faster. So it's hard, and it's not hard. It's impossible to replace Tyreek Hill. You can't do it. They're going to try. I still think the team will be just fine, and hopefully we see like you said, a very fun playoff rematch that stays out of overtime this time between Buffalo and Kansas City, which leads us to the great wild northern expanse of New York State. Buffalo, our final team, deserved. We've said this team's ranked too high, this team's ranked too low, this team's Goldilocks just fine. This is exactly what I'm saying of this team. They are ranked properly. This roster is constructed in the right way. They lucked out big with Josh Allen. There are so many quarterbacks who have big problems. Looking at you, Stinky Tua, who just are incapable of either overcoming that or having the coaching staff and the gumption to overcome that. The pieces just aren't there for them to make such strides as we saw from Josh Allen. I could go through my whole life maybe watching football and not see someone take a step forward like that. He is at the point where he can and may win the MVP of the league this year. If the team plays to their level, that's a bet I have in my pocket and I think has a very good chance to cash. This team has a absolute wide receiver one. This team has an absolute tight end one. This team has a couple of decent running backs, a good to great defense. And yes, we lost a coordinator. That is the biggest bugaboo here. But again, it's a team with a bunch of experience, has been to the playoffs a few years in a row now, has made some deep runs now. And I think we're there. I think this is time to exercise the demons of the early 90s, the Jim Kelly, Andre Reed, Thurman Thomas. Oh man, those were super exciting, fun teams that almost got there. This might be the one that breaks through for the Buffalo Bills. You're muted. Your camera went away for a second. I don't know if you were doing nudity. You're still muted. Yeah, you hit it twice, I think.
Okay, sorry
about that. Buffalo? Oh,
no,
you're good.
Buffalo's number. I was getting a phone call by accident. Buffalo number one with a bullet.
You can't get a phone call by accident. Somebody called you on purpose.
Well, no, somebody called on purpose, but it was not unexpected that meant. Buffalo number one with a bullet. Super Bowl or bust. Josh Allen is my MVP, and ultimately Josh Allen is the perfect playoff quarterback. If they do not succeed, it is because Sean McDermott makes questionable decisions in game in terms of when to punt, when to go for it. In general, he wants to run too much. Hopefully, all of the smoke about running more and using Josh Allen on the ground less is a early regular season issue, not something that we would expect for the playoffs. And slightly worried that the defense regresses. I don't think they're a top 5 unit, surely, because Les Frazier can be schemed well against. And if in general he doesn't have the right game plan on a given day, then they're going to give up points, and it's up to Josh Allen to outscore you, which he can do in basically every scenario. So I'm high on Buffalo. I think they get it done. I think this is their year, and with that, I think they beat the Who in the Super Bowl. In your opinion?
Buffalo over Philly.
Oh, wow. That's a hot take. Very good.
That's a fun one. All right. Well, we did 32 of these. We did this preview. I hope you have a good Labor Day. We're going to run. Do us a favor. Leave us a 5-star review on the podcast. Put your Super Bowl prediction in there. We'll revisit that at the end of the year. Quick addendum. Harold Landry tore his ACL yesterday.
Yikes.
That is a big blow to a team that we were already cold on.
Do not like.
It's not a good thing for anybody to have a high-end rusher like that lose his entire season. So that's tough break for him. I like him a lot. Obviously, this happened on Thursday when we recorded this, and you're looking at this Monday. Old news for you, but I just wanted to mention it to Drew as we play us out. We'll catch you Wednesday.
Man, bummer. On Landry.
Yeah, always it's the preseason. I feel like we've been light on.
Yeah,
ACLs,
we definitely
honestly.
have. We definitely have.
Haven't had as many as we usually do.
Yep. Good job, man. That was perfect. Almost got it. We almost did it in an hour.
Oh, we were so close.